another episode of Mood for Feud. I'm your host Katya, and today I am in the mood to get into the very messy feud between Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and the rest of the royal family. Remember, if you enjoy the show and would like to support it, then please do leave a rating. You can leave a comment on Spotify, written review on Apple Podcasts, and you can follow the show so you never miss another episode. I'm also on Instagram and, as of this week, TikTok at Mood for Feud on both, so you can message me there if you're in the mood to chat pop culture. First of all, thank you so much to @Kazuma for requesting this episode. I will admit I do have kind of weird feelings when it comes to the royal family. I think anyone who lives in a Commonwealth country might potentially feel the same way, but definitely growing up in New Zealand, you get this kind of weird feeling towards the British monarchy because of the brutal colonization history that is part of our country's history and narrative. And, you know, the ramifications of colonization are still so present in today's day and age as well, and you can see the impacts of it still affecting people. And so, because the country itself is still hurting, even though it happened 200 plus years ago, it just means that I can't really enjoy the royals as much as I would like to because of what they represent, or when I see them, it's like the instant association that I have to them is of the people who colonized the country that I grew up in. And I know obviously the people within the royal family themselves aren't personally responsible for what happened, but in any case, I just find it tricky to look at them and look at the wealth that they sit on and the foundation that they've built for themselves, which granted they do put into a lot of charitable causes and things like that, but when I see them in their fancy clothing and, you know, fancy buildings that they live on, I just can't help but feel like they're sitting on blood money and that they essentially have built this empire for themselves by stealing from Indigenous nations and Indigenous communities. So all that to say, I want to just enjoy them for what they are, which is essentially just like a rich family, but I don't know. I can't do it. I think it's still too soon for me. I think if we weren't still seeing the impacts from colonization, I'd be able to join in the fun, but it's still too soon. The history is obviously interesting to me, and I do think I find them interesting people to watch. I love all the conspiracy theories that come out of the royal family. I love the TV shows that are about royals and royalty and monarchy and political powers and Young Victoria. That movie is absolutely bomb. Obviously, I'm also obsessed with Princess Diana. She can do no wrong in my eyes because she's an absolute icon, but I don't know, my feelings are mixed. I don't think I'll ever be able to get rid of that knot in my stomach that I feel when I look at them, or that little bit of just feeling pissed off or feeling angry about how their family came to be and why they have all this wealth and all this power. I feel like we don't need a monarchy, you know? All that being said, let's get into it. I'm gonna give, as always, a little background on Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, their relationship, and then we will get into the messy feud. There's a lot to unpack here and a lot to get through, so sit back and relax. So Rachel Meghan Markle, she was born on the 4th of August in 1981 in Los Angeles, California, and this makes her a Leo. And her mom is Doria Ragland and her dad is Thomas Markle, and Meghan has described that she has very mixed feelings when it comes to her heritage. She was quoted as saying, "My dad is Caucasian and my mom is African American. I'm half black and half white. While my mixed heritage may have created a grey area surrounding my self-identification, keeping me with a foot on both sides of the fence, I have come to embrace that." And I think this feeling of feeling like you've got one foot on either side of the fence, or feeling like you come from two places at once but don't fully belong to either of them, I think that's something that any biracial person can sympathize with, or to an extent understand, because it is a bit of a weird feeling, and it shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't matter that much, but it does. And so I don't know, I really resonated with what she was saying there. Her mom worked as a social worker and also a yoga instructor, and her dad, he was actually in the entertainment industry. He was a television director of photography and a lighting director as well, and he actually won an Emmy for some of the work that he had done on television sets. And so Meghan grew up quite adjacent to the entertainment industry. She would accompany her dad to sets of the TV show Married with Children, and that's where she first kind of got her kickstart or her passion for wanting to be in the entertainment industry herself. Now, because her dad won this Emmy, it did give him a nice financial boost, which meant that Meghan was able to attend private schools growing up. And right off the bat, she had an early interest in social justice, particularly when it came to women's rights or fighting for equality. At age 11, she famously wrote to Procter & Gamble asking them to change a cleaning advert which contained the line, "Mothers around America are fighting greasy pots and pans," and she asked them to change this to "People around America are fighting greasy pots and pans," because the way that their advert focused on mothers, to her it made it sound like mothers were expected to be in the kitchen or mothers were expected to do all the cleaning. And you know what, she has a good point there, because it doesn't really make sense to target a cleaning product completely just to mothers. I'm not a mother and I use cleaning products every single day, so it just didn't really make much sense. Now, Meghan actually also appeared on a Nickelodeon show, Nick News, where she explained her story, how she was shown the advert in class and they were discussing the messages behind it, and then that this inspired her to write a letter to the First Lady at the time, who I believe was Hillary Clinton, and then she also wrote a letter directly to Procter and Gamble. On this Nick News segment, she alleges that she got responses from Procter & Gamble and from Hillary Clinton, but it's really unclear as to how true that is, even though Procter & Gamble did end up changing the advert to say "People all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans." It's really unclear as to whether they did this as a direct result of an 11-year-old's letter, or whether, you know, they probably got more than just one complaint on that. I doubt she's the first person to watch the ad and think like, wait a second. But I don't think it really matters. This is something that the Meghan haters love to bring up. They're always like, there's no evidence that Procter & Gamble actually read her letter. And I'm like, but why does that matter? Like, the point of the story, in my opinion anyway, is to show that from an early age, she was someone who, if she didn't agree with something, would speak up about it or would say her mind about it, and was someone who was, from a young age, realizing that there were very strong gender inequalities in the social climate and that these needed to be addressed. Like, that's the point of the story, in my opinion. But anyway, people love to bring up that there's no evidence. She attended Northwestern University following high school, and she graduated from university in 2003 with a bachelor's degree majoring in theatre and also international studies. Following university is when she started pursuing her acting career. She landed minor roles on TV shows such as Century City and CSI New York, and she was also in an episode of House, as I discovered earlier this year on a rewatch. But she wasn't really taking off or breaking through into the acting market, so to support herself in between jobs, she worked as a freelance calligrapher on the side. So she would do people's wedding invitations and things like that, which is kind of a cool side hustle. Like, I wish my handwriting was nice. I wouldn't mind doing some calligraphy on the side. I reckon it would be quite relaxing. She also stars as a briefcase girl on Deal or No Deal, which, by the way, if I went on that show as a briefcase girl, I would literally never shut up about it, because all the briefcase girls are so gorgeous, and I feel like my ego, if I got selected, would just be through the damn roof. But again, she wasn't like getting into the acting industry full time. In 2015, she recalled, "Being ethnically ambiguous as I was pegged in the industry meant I could audition for virtually any role. Sadly, it didn't matter. I wasn't black enough for the black roles and I wasn't white enough for the white ones, leaving me somewhere in the middle as the ethnic chameleon who couldn't book a job." However, in 2011, her luck does change when she gets cast in the TV show Suits, and she remained on this show until 2018, retiring after Prince Harry proposed to her. She also founded a lifestyle website called The Tig. Never really clicked on to the lifestyle website fad that was happening in the 2010s, something that I obviously didn't have an interest in at the time because I don't even really remember half of these. But, you know, we talked in a previous episode about Blake Lively's lifestyle website called Preserve, the most popular one, Gwyneth Paltrow with her website Goop, and then Kourtney Kardashian's Poosh. So I feel like I need to do a little digging. I'd love to know what other celebrities had these lifestyle websites, because the only ones that I like consciously remember are Goop and Poosh, because I feel like those ones stood the test of time. But I had no idea that Meghan Markle had this site called The Tig, and I also didn't really remember Blake Lively's Preserve. I'm just wondering what other celebrity lifestyle websites are in the Google archives somewhere. The Tig also featured a column where Meghan would profile different women. So again, we've got this very recurring theme that she has passion for highlighting women issues or drawing spotlight to women who are in leadership positions or doing work in their respective industries. In 2020, Meghan also has a miscarriage, which she has very candidly spoken about, and how difficult of an experience this was for her, just drawing a lot of attention to issues that aren't talked about as much, or it might even be a bit taboo to talk about. So I do appreciate her for that. I'm not necessarily a massive Meghan Markle fan, but I have to respect her because I feel like consistently throughout her career, she has had a passion for empowering women. And I know a lot of people think that this is all very fake, but when we run through her history in this way, we see it popping up time and time again. So I don't know, if it is fake, like, she's doing a very good job at being consistently fake. In 2022, she also hosted the podcast Archetypes, where she interviewed different celebrities about the stereotypes that women face, with the aim to investigate, dissect, and subvert the labels that try to hold women back. And some of the guests that she had on the show were the likes of Serena Williams, Mariah Carey, Mindy Kaling. You know, like, is she being fake? She's being pretty consistently fake, if you ask me. The podcast was also produced by Royale Inc., which is the organization founded by her and Harry, and they got like a massive deal with Spotify for this podcast. However, after just 12 episodes, the show went on an indefinite hiatus. I should have looked into this because now I'm going off memory, but I believe that the CEO of Spotify or whoever made the deal with them ended up calling them grifters for it, because it's like they took the deal, did a couple episodes, and then left. Hearing that they only made 12 episodes and then decided like, no, this shit's too hard, personally just makes me a little bit proud. It's like, I don't have multi-millions from Spotify, and I've done a little bit more than 12 episodes, so I don't know. Okay, on to Prince Harry. He was actually born Henry Charles Albert David, and when I was looking into this, I was like, wait a minute, what's his last name? What is the royal family's last name? And when I looked this up, it just changes. It changes to whatever the sovereign in charge at the time wants to change it to. They can just pick a name whenever, at a whim. So for example, in 1917, when King George V was the sovereign in charge, he just picked Windsor to be the family name, because it used to be before that Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. And in 1917, amid all of the World War I dramas, King George felt like they needed a last name that sounded a little bit less German. So he just changed it to Windsor. Like, it was just a PR name, basically. When Queen Elizabeth II was in charge, she changed it to Mountbatten Windsor because Mountbatten was the surname of her husband, Prince Philip, and she wanted his legacy to be recognised in the royal name as well. But typically the surname is only really used for royals that don't have a title. So everyone else just is known by their first name. So like his name is just Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, I guess. I don't know why that surprised me so much. I think it's just because like the whole point of the royal family is that it's like something that you're born into and the family that rules, and there's this emphasis on the family being very important, and yet the one name that they all share is like irrelevant. So I don't know. But Harry was born on the 15th of September in 1984, and this makes him a Virgo, and he was obviously born in London, and his dad is the now King Charles, and his mum is Diana Spencer, who was the Princess of Wales at the time, and yeah, his older brother is obviously William. It seems silly doing a background on this man. Because I feel like this is all stuff that we know. But he had a very standard royal upbringing, being raised at Kensington Palace. Diana did want both of her boys to have more of a quote-unquote normal upbringing though, so she would take them to places like McDonald's and Disneyland, which weren't really common for royal children to attend. But she would also take them with her to AIDS clinics and homeless shelters because she was obviously a very strong advocate for AIDS. In a time where there was so much misinformation and fear circling the disease, I kind of love that she was such a strong advocate for the cause and then also involved her kids in it from such a young age. And from the clips that I've watched, people described her as a very hands-on mother. She, wasn't afraid to run around with Prince William and Prince Harry and wasn't afraid to get muddy. So she just seemed like she would have been a really positive influence in their life, particularly growing up in the royal family where there's a bunch of rules you have to follow and a bunch of protocols that you have to meet. And I do wonder how different things would be between, not only just between Will and Harry, but also in the royal family in general if Diana was still alive. Because as we probably all know, in 1997 she very tragically died in a car crash in Paris while she was being harassed by paparazzi. And at the time that this happened, Harry was just 12 years old, which makes me so sad because that is so young to lose a parent. And I looked up the images of them at Diana's funeral, and it really just reminds me just how young the boys were when they lost Diana. And it's just so heartbreaking. I mean, it was just such a tragic occasion. Elton John very famously performed Candle in the Wind at Diana's funeral with rewritten lyrics to pay tribute to Diana. And this song, it still makes me cry because she was truly such a remarkable woman. And I don't know, I feel like this is an eldest daughter specific obsession. If you're an eldest daughter, tell me if you also are irrationally obsessed with Princess Diana and everything she stands for. I don't know, I just think she brought so much good into this world. I will never not wonder what the state of the royal family would be if she was still around. Maybe I need to do a Charles, Camilla, Diana episode, and then it'll give me another excuse to talk about Diana, but I won't get into all that just yet. Prince Harry also attended a bunch of private schools, and he went to the renowned Eton College, which is a super expensive and very exclusive boarding school for boys. Some of its renowned alumni includes obviously Will and Harry, but also Eddie Redmayne, Tom Hiddleston, Bear Grylls, George Orwell. So a lot of famous men attend Eton College. He graduates high school in 2003 and launches into a little working holiday in Australia. He actually worked in Queensland. He was working as a jackaroo, which is a term that typically describes a young person working on a sheep or cattle station. But yeah, he wanted to learn more about agriculture in the outback. And this ranch that he worked on was owned by one of Diana's friends, so they set the whole thing up for him. I don't know why I found this so amusing, but I guess it's just the fact that, finishing high school, he could have gone anywhere. He could have done anything, and he chose to go into the middle of bang smack nowhere in Queensland and work on a farm in 40-degree heat, might I add. I think this does kind of show, though, this recurring theme where Harry never really showed too much interest in wanting to stay in the palace and wanting to work in the palace in the same way that Will did. I think throughout we see this real interest that he has for doing kind of normal things or things that maybe you wouldn't expect someone of his station to be interested in. During this little gap year, he also followed in his mum's footsteps and produced a documentary film about the AIDS epidemic. He spent a lot of time in Lesotho and recorded a lot of footage there, which was then used in the documentary. And then in 2005, he enters the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst, and in 2006 he completes his training and was commissioned as a cornet, and then in 2008 he is promoted to lieutenant. And a lot of people who were in the military with Harry mentioned that he didn't want any special treatment, and he really enjoyed that in the military he was just another person. Like, he wasn't treated like a prince, which again, we've got this common vein. Now in 2007 he actually gets deployed to Afghanistan, and this was a massive point of contention because some people felt like the prince shouldn't be allowed to get deployed because it's obviously very dangerous, and then other people were like, no, he should get deployed, like why should he get given special treatment? And Harry was also in the camp that believed he should get deployed, and I kind of agree, because it's not like he's being drafted, right? Like, he's there out of his own free will. If he really didn't want to get deployed, then he wouldn't have to. He didn't need to be there in the first place. But I think if he is going to pursue this career in the military, then he kind of can't say no to being deployed. Some people were also concerned that Prince Harry would become a target, and it would actually be like less safe for the other people he's being deployed with. If the opposition find out he's there, you know, he could get targeted for ransom and whatever. So from that perspective, I can see the danger of him being deployed and how it might impact those around him. But in the end, he did actually get deployed from 2007 to 2008, but it was very like hush hush. No one was meant to find out that he'd been deployed, and definitely no one was meant to know where he was. However, in 2008, the media did find out, and they went and published all about his deployment, which meant he had to very quickly come back home due to the safety implications. And then in 2012 he was deployed a second time, and this time there was kind of a deal that the media would be allowed to film him during Christmas. So they gave them like a set window of his deployment that they could come shoot their shit, and then the deal was outside of that they'd have to leave him alone. And from this footage that they got around Christmas time is where we get the very iconic meme of Prince Harry mid-interview, like hearing that they're being called to action and like ripping the mic and sprinting off to the helicopter, which I just love that video so much. I don't know why. I've watched it like 40 times probably. It just makes me laugh every time. In 2014, Harry founded the Invictus Games, which is a multi-sport event for wounded, injured and sick veterans. And then in 2015, he retired from the military as a captain. And then just 1 year after that, in 2016, is when he meets Meghan Markle. So let's get into their relationship. So Harry and Meghan meet in July 2016 after a friend sets them up for a blind date. Is it really a blind date though? I mean, they both say that they didn't know much about one another. Like, Harry had never watched Suits, and Meghan didn't grow up in a Commonwealth country, so she didn't really know too much about the royal family either. But I feel like it just doesn't really count as a blind date if you can like Google the other person. But Meghan recalls that she didn't really care about knowing too much about Prince Harry before the date. The one question she asked the mutual friend is whether he was kind, because that was going to be the most important thing for her, which I'm like, who was this friend that you didn't trust them to set you up with a kind person? I feel like if my good friend is setting me up on a blind date, I don't need to ask if they're kind, because it's like, why would they set me up with an asshole? But anyway, their first date is at Soho House, which is an exclusive members club, and the date actually goes so well that they immediately arrange a second date the very next day. After that second date, they were very keen to keep hanging out. They got their schedules out. Obviously, Meghan at the time is filming Suits. Harry's got a bunch of royal engagements that he needs to attend, and they're comparing schedules and trying to find the very next opportunity to hang out, because they both could tell that there was like a spark between them and they wanted to get to know one another better. And then 3 to 4 weeks later is when Prince Harry invites Meghan to join him in Botswana, and they camp for a week, which I was like, this is crazy to me, the fact that they've only been on 2 dates and now they're going to spend a week sharing a tent. I mean, okay, it was probably glamping, but still. Harry later said that during this camping trip in Botswana is when he first realized that Meghan was his soulmate, and they begin a long-distance relationship, constantly traveling to one another to spend as much time as their schedule would permit. Meghan describes that she would fly to London for 4 days to a week and then straight back to Canada to keep filming Suits, and she would be going to set like straight off the plane. So they were really putting in a lot of effort to spend as much time with one another despite being in a long distance relationship. And they also had a good 5 to 6 month run where their relationship was relatively private. It was being kept out of the press. However, then in October 2016 is when the tabloids first reported that Harry and Meghan were dating. Wait a minute, the math ain't mathing. Like, they're saying they had a good 5 to 6 months of private relationship, yet this first date that they had was in July, and then the tabloids started reporting in October. They did clarify this timeline a little bit later in their documentary Harry and Meghan. Harry describes that they actually first connected on Instagram around April, May. He says, quote, "I was scrolling through my feed and someone who was a friend had this video of the two of them. It was like a Snapchat and it's with doggy ears, and that was the first thing. I was like, who is that?" I love this so much because why is it always the damn doggy ear filter? I can't believe that this is part of their relationship narrative. But I also love that they clarified that, because I think it's very normal in today's day and age that your first contact with the person that you end up, being with happens on social media. And I think it's something we don't need to be afraid of admitting anymore. And we need to stop putting organic meetings on this pedestal, because the reality is that a lot of people's interactions happen online, and that's okay. So I'm kind of glad that he came out and was like, you know what, the first video I saw of Meghan, she had the Snapchat filter on, and I was like, who is that? Which, by the way, why is a man questioning who someone is always like the biggest sign that they find someone attractive? This really reminded me of when Justin Bieber tweeted that photo of Cindy Kimberly and was like, guys, who is this? It's the exact same energy to me. But anyway, Harry asks the mutual friend who that is in the video with her, and that is when he asks for Meghan's number. So they had been talking online, and then this blind date, which then I'm like, is it even really a blind date? Was the first time that they met in person. So when you know that, I also feel like it makes the decision to go camping after 2 dates in Botswana a little bit less weird. It makes a bit more sense. Now, like I mentioned, in October 2016 is when the tabloids first report that they are seeing one another, and Harry and Meghan actually got tipped off before the article went live, basically saying, like, tomorrow everyone, the world will know that you guys are dating. And so they decide to have like one last fun hurrah while they're still anonymous, and they attend a Halloween party in Toronto. And then the next day, as promised, the story breaks and Meghan is subjected to an absolute media attack. It's actually so bad that Kensington Palace has to issue a statement on behalf of Harry, like asking people to stop doing that and condemning the harassment that Meghan, but also her family, are facing, because they're concerned for Meghan and her family's safety. Like, that's how bad the articles were. Meghan's being attacked for being a divorcee because she had a husband before Harry. She's also being attacked for being older than Harry. Mind you, she's only like 3 or 4 years older than him. It's not anything problematic. She's being attacked for being American, for being an actress, and of course, because she's also half black. And I made the mistake of searching Meghan's name in October, November 2016 because I really wanted to see what the articles around this time were saying, and it was bad. So The Sun, which by the way, I hate this newspaper so much, they publish a like front page story which alleges that Meghan is on Pornhub. First of all, sex work is not shameful. Like, let's just get that out there right off the bat. Sex work is not shameful. But also, the story just wasn't really in good faith. Like, it wasn't actually that true, because what they were meaning is that clips of Meghan in the show Suits, some of the raunchier scenes in the TV show, had been uploaded to Pornhub. So the caption, Meghan is on Pornhub, doesn't really accurately portray the fact that what they meant is parts of the TV show that she's on have been uploaded to the site. But then also it's like, again, sex work is not shameful, but you also can't just lie about people being in the industry. The Sun also hired a private investigator that went to the US to uncover personal information about Meghan. And then they did a tell-all exclusive with one of Meghan's half-sisters, who, by the way, Meghan didn't even really have a relationship with this half-sister. They hadn't spoken in like over a year, but the Sun does like a full-blown exclusive tell-all. The half-sister's like alleging that Meghan's got cynical reasons for dating Prince Harry and he shouldn't trust her because she's just after his power and his connections. The Daily Mail also publishes a commentary piece which is incredibly racist but also deeply disturbing. The piece starts with the author saying that ever since Princess Diana died, she's just had really strong maternal feelings for Harry, so that whenever he dates anyone, she tries to see whether they'll pass the mum test. This makes me feel all kinds of creeped out, and also, what in the parasocial relationship is going on here? Like, you are not Harry's mum. And then, you know, surprise, surprise, Meghan does not in fact pass the mum test. She refers to Meghan as having exotic DNA that will thicken the pale skin and blue blood of the royal family. And then she also describes Meghan's mom, Doria, as being a, quote, dreadlocked African-American lady from the wrong sides of the tracks. Like, how fucking racist is that? First of all, Doria is a social worker, so I don't really understand what you mean by she's from the wrong side of the tracks. Like, she's doing really good work in her community. But also, to be a social worker, you need to, like, be based where your clients are. Like, what? Anyway, I just thought that was so stupid. There's another incredibly racist headline that says, quote, Harry's girl is almost straight out of Compton, and then proceeds to break down the amount of crimes that had happened in the neighborhood where Meghan grew up and where her mum at the time resided. I just don't understand how any of this is relevant. Like, why does it matter that they grew up in an area where there's crime? Like, that doesn't make them personally responsible. And then they also write about how Meghan Markle has an aunt who lives in Inglewood, which has been affected by gang violence, and Markle grew up in an area that was home to the Bloods gang. And it's all just it has so many racial undertones that just make my stomach twist. And it's disgusting. That's really the only proper word that there is for it. Yeah, there's a lot of articles also coming out that Meghan is only dating Harry because she wants power, she wants wealth, that she wants to be in the limelight. You know, she was just some actress off Suits and she's trying to become A-list. It gets so bad that Harry actually tells Meghan not to talk to the paparazzi anymore, because when they were photographing her, she would, you know, smile politely and ask them politely to, like, please stop, but with a smile on her face. So then all of these articles started coming out about how Meghan loves the spotlight and loves being photographed. So he was like, you can't talk to them because now they're using that against you. So yeah, incredibly disappointing to say the very least. But unfortunately, Meghan is still subject to online vitriol to this day. In December 2022, Jeremy Clarkson, who is on the show Top Gear, he posted an opinion column once again in The Sun, and the piece was so bad that it received more than 25,000 complaints, and The Sun ended up taking down his piece as well. And the whole piece was him just talking about how much he hates Meghan Markle and how much he like doesn't want her to be in the limelight anymore, which is also wild because he's never met Meghan at this point in time. Why does he have such strong feelings towards someone who he essentially doesn't even know? And so the overall sentiment in the press is just that Meghan is a massive manipulative bitch who basically charmed Prince Harry because she wants access to the royal institution. Despite all that, Harry and Meghan do persevere through the vitriol, and 1 year later, in October 2017, Harry proposes at a cottage. They're having like a very cozy night in. They're roasting chicken. He has a bottle of champagne, and Meghan said it was very sweet and very natural and also just a total surprise. And then 1 year later, in 2018, they get married at St. George Chapel at Windsor Castle, and this was the most watched royal wedding in the world. Also, the timing, 2018, like, that would have definitely added to why a lot more people were watching, is because a lot more people had access to the internet and an ability to watch the wedding. Do you remember where you were when this royal wedding was happening? I unfortunately do. I was in a club in the toilets. Shout out if you're from Wellington, shout out to Siglo. I was in Siglo, and I remember I went to go toilet and there's this girl standing in there with her phone crying, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, are you okay? You know, what's happened? And she's like, oh, I'm just watching the royal wedding. And that moment like stuck out to me, and so now I remember exactly where I was while Harry and Meghan were getting married. And I mean, the wedding was gorgeous. They look like they're straight out of a Disney movie. She's also incredibly beautiful. Like, I don't know if I mentioned that enough during her background section, but like, she's so stunning. There's that one clip where he like removes her veil, and my god, everyone deserves to be looked at the way that she is looking at him in that clip. Crazy. I can see why that girl was crying now. Like, I get it. I understand. In May 2019, Meghan gives birth to Archie, and then in 2021 they have another child together, a daughter named Lilibet. And now in 2024, the only news that I've seen from them recently is that they are potentially divorced. I haven't seen anything concrete enough to believe this. A lot of the articles that I saw were basing this on the fact that Harry went to some charity event in Africa and he by himself without Meghan, and he looked really happy to be there by himself. But also, like, I don't think he needs to look fucking depressed anytime he's not with Meghan. Like, I think that's unreasonable, but maybe there's more to the rumor than just that, and I just haven't seen it yet. But yeah, let me know. Do you think they're secretly divorced or heading for divorce? Alright, let's get into the feud. Now, a lot of this is alleged and based on royal sources, which is like, who is that? That's probably just some random person writing shit online. And then some of it's also based on things that Harry and Meghan have said either in their docuseries or things that Harry wrote in his memoir Spare. I will just say, Harry and Meghan, they're unreliable narrators, okay? There's a lot of times where they tell a story and then will retell it at a different occasion and the facts will shift slightly, and look, that's normal for anyone who tells a story over and over again. But yeah, it's just happened a few too many times where I don't necessarily think they're doing it out of malicious intent, but the point is, any version of truth that they tell in interviews will always just be based on their own perspective of things. So all of that to say, take this whole feud timeline with a grain of salt. But let's get into it. 2016, this is where we're kicking things off. Harry and Meghan have just gone public in October, and in December, Meghan is wearing an H initial necklace, and the palace reportedly get annoyed with her over this because they see this as her trying to encourage the media frenzy. So she gets asked not to wear that necklace anymore. I don't know if that's true or not, but it just seems so silly to me that like they're trying to insinuate that she's encouraging paparazzi articles by wearing an H necklace after it's already come out that they're dating. In 2016 is also the first time where Meghan meets Kate, and she describes that in this moment it was very clear that her cultural upbringing was just very different to how things are done in the royal family. She recalls Even when William and Kate came over and I met her for the first time, they came over for dinner, and I remember I was in ripped jeans and I was barefoot. I was a hugger. I've always been a hugger. I didn't realize that is really jarring for a lot of Brits. I guess I started to understand very quickly that the formality on the outside carried through on the inside. I kind of have to sympathize with her there because I feel like I would be the same. I would be like, oh yeah, obviously in front of the crowds, we're going to all be super formal. But I would also assume that if Will and Kate are just coming to my house for dinner, that we're not going to be super formal and we can just like hug and chill out and like just be a bit more candid. But I guess there was an expectation that there would still be formality upheld even when the cameras weren't there. In 2017, there is an argument that breaks out between William and Harry because William tells Harry he thinks he's moving too fast with Meghan. And look, they did kind of move fast, right? Like they met in 2016. And then in 2017, they're already engaged. And then in 2018, they're married. Like that all happened in the span of like 2 years, which is, in my opinion, at least fairly fast. But also Harry and Meghan are in their 30s at the time. And I feel like as you get older, you don't need as much time with someone to like know whether they are a person that you would like to spend the rest of your life with. Will and Kate dated on and off for like 8 years before Will proposed, but also they met in their 20s. And I think in your 20s, it's a very different dating landscape. There's a lot of things that you still don't know about yourself either that you're trying to work through whilst also trying to get to know someone else. So I think it makes sense to me that Will and Kate had a longer dating period before they got engaged in comparison to Harry and Meghan. The reports from the royal insiders is that Harry took this quite personally and he took this as William like attacking his relationship with Meghan. Look, I'd have to be there to make up my opinion on this, right? Because it's all about the tone when it comes to conversations, like saying to someone you care about that maybe they're moving too fast in a relationship, or just encouraging them to slow down a little. It's all in the tone and how it's portrayed as to whether it was condescending, whether it was a direct attack on Meghan, or whether Harry just like overreacted. The general gist from the people who overheard the conversation is that Harry like overreacted basically. And then in May 2017, Pippa Middleton, which is Kate's sister, and James Matthews get married, and people notice that Meghan only attends the reception, so she's not there for the actual ceremony. That same year, Meghan meets Queen Elizabeth for the first time, and she describes that it went really well. Her and the Queen got on great. Harry warned her in advance that she needed to curtsy when she met her, and yeah, she describes the moment as being very welcomed into the family. And then everyone also attends Meghan and Will's engagement party, so it seems like even though there's an argument between Harry and Will, it seems like everyone's sucking it up and just moving on. In 2018, Will, Kate, Harry and Meghan all attend an event for the Royal Foundation, and again things seem to be all good between the four of them. There's a lot of photos of them all smiling and chatting together. Seems like they're ready to get over what little bumps in the road there were the previous year. And then in the lead up to Harry and Meghan's wedding, there's some tensions between Kate and Meghan regarding Princess Charlotte's flower girl dress. And this is because Kate allegedly texted Meghan like 4 days before the wedding to say that Charlotte's dress didn't fit properly and that Charlotte like burst into tears when she tried it on because it was too big for her. And then Meghan directed Kate to see the tailor because the royal palace had like a standby tailor for all the wedding outfits in the lead up. And then apparently Kate was saying, no, the dresses all need to be completely remade for all of the flower girls. And, there was some back and forth. And the reports at the time were that Meghan made Kate cry over these dresses. Although later Harry and Meghan did clarify that it was actually Meghan that cried because Kate was just so reluctant to see the tailor because her whole perspective was that the dresses needed to be remade, which like 4 days out from the wedding, you can see why that might like stress a bride out. Then apparently Meghan tells Kate that she has baby brain, which that's rude. Like I'm not going to try to defend that, okay? Like that's not okay to say to someone. And then Kate does eventually take Charlotte's dress to the tailor, and the tailor did come out later with a statement saying that he didn't see any tensions between Kate and Meghan, but that the dresses were too big for the flower girls, and his teams pulled some like all-nighters in the lead up to the wedding, re-altering every single dress. Meghan was under a lot of stress at this time. Obviously, she's got a big royal wedding coming up that's going to be so heavily televised that a girl in New Zealand is going to be watching it on her phone in a club bathroom. But she's also under a lot of stress because her dad, Thomas Markle, was staging paparazzi pics for money in the lead up to the wedding. And by the way, these images are my new Roman Empire, because it's so crazy to me that they were going to try sell these as candid photos when they look so staged. Like, they look like they're from a TV show. But Thomas says the reason he decided to do staged paparazzi photos wasn't for financial reasons, but was because he had been photographed in an unflattering manner in the lead up to the wedding, because some paparazzi like found out he was Meghan Markle's dad and then would, just take unflattering photos, as paparazzi always do. They snapped some pics of him buying beer and then started making up headlines that he was an alcoholic. And so he says that it was actually an attempt to clear his image in the lead up to the wedding. And then one of Meghan's sisters, Samantha, she comes forward saying it was actually her idea for him to stage some paparazzi pics, because she was upset seeing how much it upset their dad that there were these unflattering images around. But obviously the palace was less than impressed at him doing these publicity stunts for money, and there was a lot of back and forth over whether he was going to attend the wedding, which obviously was causing a lot of stress for Meghan because he's meant to walk her down the aisle. But ultimately he did decide that he couldn't come to the wedding because of a heart health concern which prevented him from traveling. So Prince Charles ended up walking her down the aisle instead. Meghan's actually been estranged from her dad since 2018, so I don't know, maybe there's more beneath all that. Obviously the tabloids are saying it's because she's embarrassed by her dad and he doesn't fit this royal image that she's trying to construct for herself, and so she needed to get rid of him. But who knows what actually happened there. I do get annoyed when a child is like estranged from their parent and then everyone just blames the child and is like, oh, she must be so embarrassed of her dad. And it's like, why aren't we asking what her dad did, Now, following the wedding, we do get more reports that Queen Elizabeth really likes Meghan and really likes her passion for humanitarianism, even though in the lead up to the wedding, there were reports saying Elizabeth didn't like the tiara Meghan wore on the day. So it's very back and forth. It's like for every article that we see saying that Meghan and Queen Elizabeth are on good terms, we get another article saying that Elizabeth hates everything she does. And then in October, Meghan and Harry announced that Meghan is pregnant, and they do this 3 days after Princess Eugenie's wedding, which allegedly pisses Princess Eugenie off because she felt like they were stealing her thunder a bit. Not too sure how true that is. And then there are reports that Will and Harry are still not on good terms, and at the time, the consensus is that Meghan is basically causing this rift between the two of them because Will doesn't think Meghan is a good match for Harry, and Harry is blinded by his love for Meghan to reason with his brother. But Harry has since dispelled this, saying that the rift between him and his brother is between him and his brother and actually had nothing to do with Meghan at all. But their rivalry is so bad that it starts to impact the staff working at the palace, and then a bunch of reports come out saying that 2 staff members in the palace actually quit their jobs because of Meghan harassing and bullying them. And this earns her the nickname Duchess Difficult. In December 2018, Harry and Meghan decide to move out of the palace and into Frogmore Cottage in Windsor. The reports at the time are that Meghan is really struggling with royal rules. One of the royal insider claims, she's always relied on her own voice to stand up for others and for herself. So not being able to say anything is a debilitating feeling. She's always been so independent her entire life, and that's all been taken away from her. And I do think that this could potentially have an element of truth behind it, because I think anyone would struggle from living a life where they can write Procter & Gamble a letter if they don't like something, or they can be very outspoken with their feelings, or if something unjust happens, they're allowed to speak up about it, and now you're part of this institution where everything you do and say has to be cleared by an HR board, and you can't just come out and make these statements or voice your opinion because it has to fit in with the institution's goals and the relationships that they are maintaining as well. So I do kind of sympathize with that a bit. And like, I'm just gonna say it, the royal family and the royal institution, they kind of give me cult vibes, because you've got all of these rules that are just set in place for seemingly no reason. All of these protocols and traditions and things you can do and things you can't do kind of just seems a bit cult-like to me, if I'm being perfectly honest. And it would be difficult to join a cult. And it would also be difficult to join the royal family, I think. So maybe the move out of the palace was a bit twofold. Maybe Meghan was craving some distance from the palace, and maybe Harry was also wanting some distance from Will. Like, I think both of those things could have been true at the same time. In 2019, while Meghan is pregnant with Archie, she hits an ultimate low in her mental health. She describes that she was feeling very suicidal at the time and had voiced her concerns to Harry, basically saying, like, you can't leave me alone because, like, I'm afraid of what I'm going to do. She's also told that she can't go to a rehabilitation facility because it would reflect really badly on the royal institution. And so Harry is understandably very concerned about the impacts that all of this negative press, but also pressures from the royal family, are having on Meghan. And around this time, we do see a shift in the narrative in the media from talking about this feud between Meghan and Kate, which, you know, started with the dress debacle. But here we actually see a shift from the press starting to say that it's actually Will and Harry who are feuding, which, to be honest, just makes way more sense to me. In his book Spare, Harry also alleges that in 2019, Will has a physical altercation with him, and he says that his brother, like, grabbed him by the collar and then knocked him onto the ground, and he like fell on this dog bowl which then cracked underneath him. So it was like, you know, a lot of grunt and force behind Will's physical attacks. So it seems like things between them are like not good at all. And then in April, Will and Harry both attend an Easter service, and they don't exchange any words. Like, they don't acknowledge each other at all. In May, Will and Kate visit Meghan and Harry at Frogmore Cottage and also express joy at the news of baby Archie being born. And then Kate and Meghan are spotted together hanging out, and Kate and Will also attend Archie's baptism. But Prince Harry does confirm that him and Will are still incredibly distant during this time. He says, quote, "Part of this role and part of this job and this family being under the pressure that it's under, inevitably, you know, stuff happens. But look, we're brothers, we'll always be brothers, and we're certainly on different paths at the moment, but I'll always be there for him as I know he'll always be there for me." And then the brothers also attend Remembrance Day, and again, they're not talking. And then Harry and Meghan skip out on Christmas at the palace and instead decide to spend it with Meghan's mum, Doria. And then in 2020, Meghan and Harry dropped the bombshell that they're stepping away from senior royal duties. Will is apparently blindsided by this and like can't believe that Harry wouldn't tell him of his plans to step down in advance. But I'm like, you guys can't even say hello to one another at Remembrance Day. So why would you expect your brother to come telling you this like massive news when seemingly you guys aren't in communication at all? Harry and Meghan release a statement that reads, "After many months of reflection and internal discussions, we have chosen to make a transition this year. We intend to step back as senior members of the royal family and work to become financially independent while continuing to support Her Majesty the Queen." I am kind of glad that they make this decision to step down, because truly nothing irks me more than when people are repeatedly unhappy in a situation and then they don't do anything about it. And they have been unhappy for some time. You know, all of these fights between Will and Harry, all of the fact that Meghan's mental health is like at an all-time low. They've had to move out of the palace. Like, it's not a good environment for them to be in. And I was really happy that they were being proactive about it and choosing to step down and choosing to do the right thing for their own well-being. Now, when the news drops, Queen Elizabeth orders like a family summit, which has since been referred to as the Sandringham Summit. Queen Elizabeth is in attendance alongside, at the time, Prince Charles and Will and Harry. And they have this big family meeting where they're discussing, how Meghan and Harry's duties and financials would look moving forward. And according to Harry, him and Meghan were kind of keen to have like a half in, half out type stance where they would still do some stuff for the royal family, but not be as heavily involved as they normally would be. But he says his family completely rejected this idea and basically said they had to either be all in or all out. He says, quote, "It became very clear very quickly that that goal was not up for discussion or debate." And then he also alleges that this summit ended up with a massive fight between him and Will, saying, "It was terrifying to have my brother scream and shout at me and my father say things that simply weren't true, and then my grandmother quietly sit there and sort of take it all in." So honestly, this whole summit sounds like it was a horrible experience for everybody involved. But following the summit, Queen Elizabeth does release a statement saying she supports Harry and Meghan to start their new lives independent of the royal family. And so Harry and Meghan's affairs are all settled, with Harry's honorary military appointment being redistributed, and then all the patronages and trusts that they were part of get reverted to the Queen. And then Buckingham Palace releases a statement that reads, "Following conversations with the Duke, the Queen has written confirming that in stepping away from the work of the royal family, it is not possible to continue responsibilities and duties that come with a life of public service." She's essentially saying, like, they're not going to be doing any of the work that they were doing beforehand because they've stepped away, and you can't step away and still serve the public at the same time. And then Harry and Meghan release a statement that says, "We can all live a life of service. Service is universal." It's kind of like a fuck you. But it is also true. Like, you don't have to be in the royal family to work for charitable organizations or do good for the public, which comes back to my ongoing question of, do we need the royal family at all? Now, the royal family issue a joint statement from Harry and Will that basically confirms that Harry and Meghan were not bullied out of the family by Will and Kate, and they're really trying to abolish the rumors that there is a rift between the brothers. And Harry describes that this was a real turning point for him, because at no point did he contribute to this joint statement that got put out, and the palace basically just wrote all that and then attached his name to it without even talking to him. He said it really struck him how quickly they were willing to lie to cover for his brother. Meanwhile, him and Meghan had been like chewed up in the press for years, and the palace never really came to their defense. Harry and Meghan relocate to LA, which is where Meghan is from, and then during the pandemic they assist by delivering meals to those in need, so still doing a lot of that charitable work that they were also doing when they were part of the royal family. And then in September, Harry and Meghan strike a deal with Netflix, which really pisses the royal family off, allegedly, because Netflix is the network that hosts the TV show The Crown, which is all about Queen Elizabeth's life. But the royal family has said that they do not like the TV show because of its inaccuracies, and it doesn't always portray them in the best light. And then in 2021, Harry and Meghan charge ahead and they do their interview with Oprah. Were you silent or were you silenced? I love that moment. I will never be mad at Harry and Meghan for doing this interview with Oprah, purely because we got the silenced moment, which such a slay. So days before this interview airs, the palace actually issues a statement saying that they're going to investigate the claims from staff that Meghan bullied them. Like, they're launching an investigation to get to the bottom of this, which some people were like, the timing is so sus, because those allegations happened years earlier, and now 3 days before they're about to do a tell-all sit-down interview with Oprah, like, now you're deciding that you need to investigate this. And again, I think they're just trying to sow some like seeds of doubt into everything that Harry and Meghan are saying and paint them in maybe a bad light as like preparation. So in the interview with Oprah, Harry and Meghan alleged that Archie, their son, was treated very differently from the other royal grandchildren. He wasn't given a royal title or the security that comes with it when he was born. I do believe that since Charles has become king, Archie does now have a title. So I don't know if there was like an issue with him being too far removed from the current sovereign at the time. I don't really understand how that all works, but that was a point of contention apparently. And then Meghan also reveals that a member of the royal family questioned what colour Archie's skin tone might be and how dark Archie was going to look because of Meghan's black ancestry. And this is obviously deeply disappointing, but it's also not surprising. Like, I'm not shocked that the royal family might be racist, you know? They give me those vibes. Meghan and Harry don't say who the family member is that was having these conversations about Archie's skin tone, but around the same time, a British journalist named Omid Scobie releases a book titled Endgame, which is all about the royal family. And in this book, Scobie alleges that they know who the royals are that had this conversation about Archie's skin tone, but they don't say who it is. They don't disclose that information. And then a Dutch translation of the book Endgame is published, and in this translation, it is revealed that King Charles and Kate Middleton were the ones who were making these comments. And so then people are like, oh my gosh, like, you know, did the person who translated the book into Dutch like accidentally forget to omit the names? But the author behind the original work has said they've never produced a draft that stated the names, and so this was just a like misprint or a complete like mistake. It's all a bit weird. In the interview with Oprah, Harry and Meghan also reveal that they are financially cut off from the royal family and that they've been relying on the inheritance that Diana left Harry to pay for their family's security, which is like the main thing that they're concerned about paying for, because obviously it's a massive health and safety concern for them to be living without like adequate security measures. I'm kind of on board with them being cut off financially because a lot of the royals' money comes from taxpayers in the UK. So like if they're not working for the royal family, why would they be getting paid? Like that kind of makes no sense to me. But I do understand their concerns for like security and stuff, because there's obviously a massive thing that they have to consider. But I do believe also that Diana left Harry like a massive inheritance. Like I think they'd be able to make it work, coupled with like Meghan's royalty checks from Suits, you know? But this is their reasoning for why they're doing all these, why they're signing a deal with Netflix, why they're doing this Oprah interview. They're saying like, we've been cut off financially, so like we have no choice but to do all of these tell-all interviews because we're just trying to get money for security for our family. And then in the same vein, in 2022, Harry announces that he is going to be releasing a memoir. And then in December 2022, Harry and Meghan come out with their docu-series. I don't know. At this point in time, I was like, they're doing too much. If I was the royal family, I would be pissed too at them airing out all our drama. I mean, like, as an observer, I'm obviously all here for it because it's tea, it's gossip, like, love. But if I put myself into the family's shoes, like, I would be horrified if someone from my family released like a tell-all memoir and just aired all of our dirty laundry for everybody to read or even listen to on an audiobook. It's just not really fair. And like I said, I understand their need for, you know, getting finances to cover things like security, but why did they have to? There's more to them than just the drama with the palace. Like, they did not need to release all of this shit, airing it out. They could have done anything they wanted. They could have done a like reality TV show about like their lives after the palace and just not addressed all of that drama, and they would have got a ton of money for it. Like, they've got the networks and the clout and the fame to build something for themselves. It's not like they're starting from scratch, you know? They're not out on their ass. Like, they've got connections to get money. They didn't need to air all this shit out with the palace. And I did feel bad for like Queen Elizabeth at the time as well, because Prince Philip died amongst all this, and then her health took a dip, and it would have just been a lot of stress for her to watch her family like fall apart around her, and it's got to be very distressing to see Will and Harry fighting with one another, and then Charles and Harry fighting, and like it's just not a nice dynamic to be in. And they, in my opinion, made the right call by stepping down from their royal duties. But why couldn't they then just like make peace with that and move on? And I'm not mad at them for hustling a multi-million-dollar Spotify deal, but like that was a good concept for the show, right? Like just use your fame and wealth to platform women and discuss women's issues, and then also get paid like a fuck ton of money for it. Like what's not to love? But the fact that they had to do the interview with Oprah, and then they also had to do the docuseries, and then Harry also had to release his memoir Spare, which he did say that he released this for like his own mental health and like part of his journey to healing. And like I'm all for journaling, like I think that's a very effective therapeutic method, but why did you need to publish it? Like you could have just journaled all your thoughts out, scrunched it up, chucked it in a fire and burnt it. So I am a bit frustrated with them. Do I think that their gripe with the palace is valid? Absolutely. I think Meghan was very unfairly treated. I think we can say that with 100% confidence just based on all of the tabloids and magazine headlines that are out there. I can imagine it would have been a very difficult thing for her to adjust to. I can kind of see, like I mentioned earlier, that Harry was never that happy in the royal family. He enjoyed things like working in the outback and being in the army. Like he never really wanted that life as far as I can tell. So I'm happy for them that they stepped down and tried to make a new life. Like I don't think any of that is a concern. Where they lose some of their credibility for me is the fact that they just keep repeatedly profiting off of it, but then they're also very insistent that they want privacy and like they don't want the press in their faces all the time, and yet they're like continuously getting us more and more info when like nobody is asking for it. In 2023, Harry and Meghan are also evicted from Frogmore Cottage in Windsor, which is a big deal. I think they'd only been using Frogmore Cottage as like accommodation whenever they went back to the UK anyway, but they said they were going to be okay with that and decided to relocate permanently to the US. Yeah, again, I'm like, well, yeah, they should be evicted. Like, I'm pretty sure that cottage is paid for by taxpayer money again. So like, get out of there. And like to this day, I don't think Harry and Will are on good terms. They're not really seen together. They will attend the big moments. So, you know, Harry went back for Queen Elizabeth's funeral. He also went back for his dad's coronation, but they're not close. Like, they're not having FaceTimes. Do you know what I mean? So I'm interested to see what's going to happen. I feel like we haven't heard much from Harry and Meghan. Maybe they were being for real when they said they just needed to make some money. Maybe they did all of these tell-all interviews and memoirs and shit like that to just get enough money, and now they can just live in peace and disappear from the public eye as they've been alleging they wanted to do. But we will see. Maybe they'll come out with, I don't know, what haven't they done yet? A TikTok series? Maybe they'll come out with something like that. Honestly, my final thoughts on this are just that women can't catch a fucking break. It truly just makes me so angry with how much the press labeled Meghan as this kind of master manipulator, all because Harry proposed after 18 months. But if we revisit Kate's experience with the press when her and Will first started dating, it was the same thing. She was labeled Waity Katie because of her long dating history with Will, and like, oh, she'll just wait around because she's hungry for the crown. And then you've got Meghan, who gets proposed to quickly. She's now a master manipulator because, oh, she just wants power, so she's rushing through the dating process. And it's like, okay, so Kate got slandered because her proposal took too long, and then Meghan's getting slandered because her proposal was too quick. Like, I think it's just really showing that no one would have ever been good enough. And I just need to know, like, did Prince Philip get this amount of grief when he started dating Queen Elizabeth? Like, was everyone labeling him as some kind of evil manipulator who's power hungry, or is this the kind of treatment that just gets reserved for the girls? Because what do they want? Like, who is someone who is deserving of dating these boys? And even though there's been a lot of reports since saying that Harry and Will were feuding irrespective of Meghan, like it had nothing to do with the women, it was purely a rift between two brothers. And even though Harry himself has also confirmed this, to this day, people will blame Meghan for like stealing Harry from the royal family, like digging her American claws in and taking him away. So I don't know. I just don't really understand it. And look, do I think Meghan Markle is perfect? No, of course not. But whenever there is this amount of negative speculation about her, it just makes me think, like, who benefits if Meghan is a supervillain? And the answer is the conservatives, the traditionalists, the misogynists, and the racists. And seeing as I don't fall into either of those camps, I just can't really get on board with this harmful narrative that she's some kind of mass manipulator, which is so deep-seated in the press that even like Jeremy fucking Clarkson feels confident enough to write a whole hate piece about Meghan when he's never even met her. All that to say, I don't think she's this evil person that everyone says she is. But it is one of those feuds where it's really tricky to tell what's true and what isn't. It's especially tricky because of how racist the media was towards Meghan as well, because now when there are these reports coming out that Meghan bullied staff and that she made them quit and that she harassed them because she was so awful to work for, which could be true, by the way, like I'm not saying that that's 100% false. That could absolutely be true. But now I will never know because I'm also like, or are you just racist? Like, I can't tell. So if you want to have some credibility in the press, maybe be less racist. That's just a top tip from me. But that is all I have for this feud. It was a lengthy one. I would love to know all of your thoughts on the royal family. What are your thoughts on Meghan Markle? Like, am I giving her a bit too much grace because I feel like she was treated very unfairly in the media? I'd love to know all of your thoughts. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast if you enjoy the show, and please feel free to leave a written review or comment. I love my words of affirmation, and you can connect with me on Instagram and TikTok at Mood for Feud. I hope everyone is crushing their goals this week, and of course, keeping out of trouble. Don't get into any feuds, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye!